Some parents are open to suggestions, other parents absolutely don't want to hear it, and if you make that telephone call, just be prepared that the parent may cuss you out over you needing to mind your own business. It happens. Hello everyone, this is Kid Hero. Today we're going to be doing a reaction regarding a video called Straight A versus Flunking Student, Do Grades Matter?
What's the hardest part about being a student?
Definitely keeping with all the work, especially when you're like me and you procrastinate a lot.
Sometimes I just don't understand and I just don't get as much help as I would want.
Probably the biggest thing in my opinion that is going to be the most challenging for a student is time management. I think you'll feel pressured not only from your friends, from your peers that aren't your friends, from teachers, from your parents and everything else. And as you're younger, it's going to be hard to manage that time because you not only have your own priorities but also your parents' priorities and dealing with all these things at one time. So probably the biggest thing for me was definitely trying to manage all of that. The second thing obviously is trying to focus as well. It can be extremely hard to focus, especially when you feel pressured by what other people think and what people say. As a now adult looking back during either high school or grade school or middle school, definitely dealing with that peer pressure was definitely something that was difficult.
I get my flunking students on the left and my straight A students on the right. I believe my grades define my intelligence.
I definitely think my grades define like how smart I am. Like that's the biggest like security point I have as a person, and I've just always been smart, and like I always want people to think I'm smart.
Yeah, I believe like that's really true for me. I believe like some subjects will enable you to show your intellect in some way, shape or form, like math, but I do think that grades can show someone's intellect, whether it's, understanding a concept or enabling themselves to, grasp a subject.
Okay, that's a very loaded question, and the reason why I call it a loaded question is while it does hit some specifics as far as, if you get good grades, it can show intelligence, but that's not to say the student that gets bad grades is not intelligent.
I didn't step up because I don't believe because I'm not comprehending the concept of geometry or algebra or poetry, that does not make me dumb, or that does not make me less smart of a person.
And again, like she said here, just because you're not grasping it doesn't necessarily make you dumb. For example, for me, I got very okay grades at most. They were grades that I got were really great, but I didn't really study that often. So I kind of squandered my talent in some aspects because since I could learn things very quickly, then I didn't necessarily put as much focus as compared to like my sister, who often studied for long periods of time and her grades reflected it. So I want that to be known for students that are out there. It just means that either you have to identify whatever challenge or roadblock that you have that's making it difficult for you to learn. I will create another video regarding the way people learn things. I think this is something that students can really benefit from. Just to kind of touch on that, obviously when you go to a normal school, the normal way that you learn is either auditory, which means you listen to someone basically lecture for an hour or whatever the length of the class is, or sitting down and reading the book, which is solitary. I think the biggest recommendation that I would provide without really going in depth in this is figure out what your best learning style for you. And for me, it's visual. I learn by watching people do stuff, so I pick up on things very quickly. Smash the like button if you're still with me.
Yeah, I think also people have different styles of learning. And a lot of times schools try to put you in this mold of how they want you to get a certain grade. And people aren't always made for that mold.
I like Cooper. I think he's a very smart young man. He's actually ahead of the curve. He did acknowledge not everyone learns the same method. Not everyone learns either from reading a book or being lectured. That's something that's incredibly true. Being able to identify how you learn saves you considerable time. That way you can spend your time on whatever else that you need to spend your time on. I think also there's a lot of gravity or weight that can be said upon the teacher who's teaching. Obviously, if you have a teacher that you can relate to or teaches in a way that's fun, can definitely not only connect with their students to make sure that they learn more quickly or keep them interested, versus someone who does something extremely cut and dry. So, example I can think of is when I was in elementary, middle school, or high school, and I often speak to the students that I teach in enrichment programming, finding why something is important not only helps your brain identify but also keeps you interested. How can this information be used in the future? So obviously when I was in geometry or math class when I was younger, the teacher would draw a triangle and it would say figure A. If we know this angle is this degree and this angle is this degree, what is the length of C? And a common question that I would ask in class would be, why do I care about the length of C? And the teacher would just say, just because that's what the problem is and that's what I want you to do. Versus now, I use geometry quite a bit, not only in building things out of wood, building things out of metal, understanding how to find out these angles or how to find out the length of something can be extremely important. For people who are interested in playing billiards or playing pool, definitely angles are extremely important. While the average player may or may not think of the actual how many degrees is that, they still visually see markers on the table and they're able to determine, okay, if I hit this spot then it should rebound and give me this particular angle. Same aspect, it can be extremely useful depending upon what it is that you're trying to do. And in class when I'm teaching elementary school kids or junior high kids, I like to not only do storytelling, that way it makes more interesting, but I also have the stories focused on me, that way I don't alienate the students. An example of this could be, okay, you and I are playing frisbee outside, the frisbee gets stuck in a tree. Now, I'm extremely scared of heights, would be the example I would give. How can I determine how high the frisbee is up the tree before I climb it? That way, when I'm foolish enough to look down, I don't get stuck and I need my best friend to call the fire department to get a ladder to prevent me from being embarrassed. So, in this case, the elementary students or junior high students may get a chuckle out of this because, okay, now I alienated myself, versus if I said, Lisa is scared of heights. Well, no, I'm not, or maybe she actually is. Rather than turning the attention on the student, I'm making the subject me being scared of heights and making it into an interesting story. So I try to make these stories as realistic as something that could potentially happen depending upon who the listeners are. That way we can hopefully try to solve the problem, make it interesting along the process, and have value.
I've had a 7th grade teacher, my English teacher, and I tried my hardest in her class. Meanwhile, I didn't know, innocent me, that she was full-blown racist, okay? So I was sitting there in that classroom working my hardest, making C's, knowing I can make A's, and it like put me down so much with my self-esteem.
Now that's a really tough subject that Tansy's referring to. Obviously, it can be extremely hard for a student to be in the position of dealing with a racist teacher or instructor. Sometimes it can be hard to even tell. It's not always said verbally.
It also like depends on your like personal standpoint with the actual teacher themselves. If you're provoking a teacher, you know, like I do it all the time. Like they're not gonna like you, but like I've learned that. But
That's a lesson in itself. That's like an experience of learning, is that you need to make friends with your teachers. They'll want to give you a good grade if you're friends with them.
Right there. He says if you're provoking the teacher, yeah, they're not gonna like you. Whether or not they're gonna provide you with the same assistance or extra assistance if you need that, that's debatable. The teacher's time is just as valuable as the student's time. It's kind of like digging a hole and then asking for assistance to get out of the hole. There was actually a really good discussion regarding this, not only in the reaction video to the 20s is a joke. I'll put the link right here. Not only seeing the previous students' viewpoint, but also my viewpoint as being an enrichment provider. And of course we had Chapo providing his reaction with him being a father. So
Happening in your life that distract you from school?
Yeah, a lot of stuff at home. I struggled with my grandma dying and my parents splitting up, and all that isn't good for my mental health, especially when I'm struggling with certain subjects and certain topics and tests and people.
there's a lot of things that can go on that can create psychological stress for the student. I think having all these different challenges, especially when everything is new or it feels new as far as when these problems come up. This is just my own opinion. If a student is dealing with not only the issues of homework and responsibility as that creates, they also have the needs or the wants that they want to do. You have to deal with peer pressure, and there could be obviously something going on at home, whether if it's a two-parent family and maybe the parents' relationship is starting to split, a mother or father who are the only provider at home. The parent could be at work either doing over hours, full-time job, or working 2 different jobs to make ends meet. Maybe the parent doesn't have the time to provide the student with assistance for homework, or if the parent isn't there trying to keep their student on track or on task, that way the student can actually manage their time properly, can definitely be a challenge. I've seen it quite a bit. There are some cases where I've tried to either intervene by speaking to the principal or the director or calling home to the parent to either provide suggestions. It can be a very awkward or it can be a very fragile situation, since some parents are open to suggestions, other parents absolutely don't want to hear it. And if you make that telephone call, just be prepared that the parent may cuss you out over you needing to mind your own business. It happens.
Being like the idea of being a straight A student, I can't relate to, because I'm always wanting to go out and like, I have an essay due, or like there's a paper that I have, and there's a paper, but there's a skateboard. I'm gonna hop on that skateboard, like I'm out. Like the fun I have just hanging out with friends and just like doing whatever we want, whenever we want. It's just so much better than like, wow, I just got an A, like, you know?
I think that's a very good point, and it acknowledges something that I had mentioned earlier. Time management as a youth is extremely important, and it can be a struggle to learn. I think in one aspect, as you're learning more about responsibility, as far as things that need to be done, managing your time, how much time should I spend in studying for school, and how much time can be applied to other things that are not only fun to do, but are also important in life. He makes an extremely good point, mentioning if he has a choice in between writing that paper or seeing the skateboard, he's definitely going to choose the skateboard. Being able to have your own personal time throughout the day or throughout the week not only maintains your personal health, but also being able to spend that time with his friends. He says he enjoys hanging out with his friends. Being able to get into those social environments, making good, solid friends. That way you not only know how to communicate your feelings, thoughts, and ideas to other people, but you have that tight group or that tight niche of friends. That way if you ever needed help, advice, or someone to listen to you, you have it. That was a good video. If you want to watch the original video, I'll put a link down in the description right here. If you have a question or comment, leave a comment in the comment section below. But other than that, this is Kid Hero, and I'll see you next time.